Jewish meal customs contain a consistent pattern at meals, where the father or host takes the loaf of bread, blesses it and gives thanksgiving, breaks the bread, and then distributes it to meal participants. This pattern is supported in several scripture passages prior to the Last Supper. Isaiah 58 verse 7 specifically says, "Is it not to break your bread for the hungry? You must bring home the poor, the homeless." In the New Testament, this exact pattern is found in Mark at least 3 times, where Jesus feeds the 5,000, where he feeds the 4,000, and then at the Last Supper. Mark 6 verse 41, "And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves and gave them." Mark 8 verse 6 says, "Taking the 7 loaves, after he had given thanks, he broke them and began giving them." And then Mark 14 verse 22, "He took bread, and after giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them." An additional aspect of the first 2 accounts in Mark here, where a handful of loaves feed thousands, lead us to a second set of threads. These passages show us that God provides plenty to sustain us, even when it doesn't physically appear possible. This same concept could be said of God supplying manna in the desert. In addition to the passages of Mark, one can find God providing more than enough when his prophets ask. Elijah is fed bread and meat by crows, another similarity to Exodus, and then a woman's flour jar does not run out. And Elisha directs a man to give his offering to the people for God, which results in leftover food. One of those examples is Elijah in 1 Kings 17, starting in verse 10. "There was a widow woman gathering wood, so he called to her and he said, 'Please bring a little water for me in a vessel so that I can drink.' She went to fetch it, and he called to her and said, 'Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand.' She said, 'As Yahweh your God lives, surely I do not have a cake, but only a handful of flour in the jar and a little olive oil in the jug. Here I am gathering a few pieces of wood, and I will go and prepare it for me and my son, that we might eat it and die.' Elijah said, 'Don't be afraid. Go and do according to your word. Only make for me a small bread cake from it first, and bring it out to me. Make it for yourself and for your son afterward. For thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, the jar of flour will not be emptied, and the jug of olive oil will not run out, until the day Yahweh gives rain on the surface of the earth.' So she went and did according to the word of Elijah. Then both she and he ate with her household for many days. The jar of flour was not emptied, and the jug of olive oil did not run out, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by the hand of Elijah." Next, Elisha in 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 38. "So Elisha returned to Gilgal. Now the famine was in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. He said to his servant, 'Put on the large pot and cook a stew for the sons of the prophets.' One went out to the field to gather herbs, and he found a wild vine and gathered wild gourds from it and filled his cloak. Then he came and he cut them into the pot of stew, but they did not know what they were. They served the men to eat, but when they ate from the stew, they cried out and said, 'There is death in the pot, O man of God!' They were not able to eat it. Then he said, 'Bring some flour,' and he threw it into the pot. He then said, 'Serve the people and let them eat.' There was nothing harmful in the pot. A man came from Baal Shalisha and brought food to the man of God, first fruits and 20 loaves of barley bread with ripe grain in his sack. He said, 'Give it to the people and let them eat.' Then his servant said, 'How can I set this before 100 men?' He said, 'Give it to the people and let them eat, for thus Yahweh says, they shall eat and have some left over.' So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of Yahweh."